Hi everybody and welcome to our webinar, Backup and Business Continuity in Atlassian Cloud featuring HYCU. My name is Kim and I work here at the marketing team of Greenique, and I'm really glad that you guys are here today and take the time to learn about backup strategies and some common compliance standards, because I think lots of people only deal or address these topics once it's too late. So I'm glad that you guys are here today and inform yourself. Before I hand over to Laura and Bogdan, just a quick note. Obviously, you can ask questions anytime you want. Please just use the chat or the Q&A feature here in Zoom, and I will monitor the questions, and Laura and Bogdan will answer them at the very end of the webinar. If you feel more comfortable to ask your questions in German, you can do so. Laura and Bogdan will decide whether they will answer in German or in English. And now, before I really hand over to those two, I want to use the opportunity and introduce Greenique very briefly for those who do not know us yet. So, Greenique, we are an agile software and consulting company from Bielefeld, and our specialty is service management with everything that it entails. So we take care of process consulting, we take care of the right tooling and the right platforms. And it is important to know that we are not only doing service management for IT departments, but we do service management for every department in companies. Because, well, in IT, service management is well known. People know what it entails, they know why it's helpful and how to work with it. But other departments like marketing, HR, accounting, they all offer services. They might not know it, but they do. And we show them how they can work more efficiently and, well, stress-free, really, with a good service management. However, we don't do this alone, but we work with a few selected partners. And three of those I want to introduce to you very briefly. First off is Atlassian. We have been working with the Atlassian tools for, I want to say, more than 15 years now. And we are among the Platinum Solution partners, which is the highest partner level that can be achieved. Furthermore, we hold special certifications in the areas of cloud and ITSM. Secondly, we are partners with Workado. And with Workado, we bring the topics automations and integrations to the forefront. And last but not least, and really the reason why you are here today, is HYCU. So we are also partners with HYCU, because with HYCU we can support you even better in terms of data security in the cloud. And so without any further ado, I would like to hand over to Laura and Bogdan and wish you all an interesting webinar.
Yeah, hello and welcome to our webinar about backup and business continuity. My name, for those who don't know me, is Laura Schweppe. I'm an IT consultant here at Greenique and also a product owner in infrastructure and migration. So I deal with HYCU, with security concerns, with a cloud setup and migrations all the time. And one of my specialties is the org administration part in Atlassian Cloud. So that's where everything flows together. And that's also why we are also concerned with backup, because that concerns the whole cloud and not just single products. Yeah, Bogdan, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yes, of course. Thanks, Laura. Hello, everyone. My name is Bogdan Viher. I'm a senior director at HYCU for Atlassian partners and sales across EMEA. And I'm very happy to be with you today and with Laura and with the Greenique team to discuss this important topic of data protection in Atlassian Cloud. Right?
Yeah, second.
So just a few words about HYCU so that you know who we are, what we do. So HYCU was built basically on the simpler realization that many organizations are increasingly moving away from classical on-prem data center infrastructures to using public cloud and SaaS applications to modernize and to efficiently run their business, their processes. And what they quickly realize is that their existing backup and recovery tools are not able to protect their data as they modernize. And we at HYCU, we want and are addressing exactly that gap. We are delivering a single solution that enables customers to fully automate backups and granularly restore their data regardless where their data is sitting. So either in your data center, or in the public cloud, or in your SaaS applications. And all that is done through a unified user experience, and that's what we basically call a universal protection of data. And success shows, so we have currently over 4,600 customers, organizations we are protecting globally, and those organizations run everything across hybrid cloud and SaaS applications. And we do that through a very rich partner ecosystem. And our mission is also supported by investors. So first we have 2 financial investors, Bain Capital and Acru, as well as 3 technology investors. One of them, of course, is Atlassian, which we are very happy about. So they quickly understood, what we are trying to achieve and how this actually supports their strategy as well. And 2 other technology investors would be Okta and Cisco.
All right, so let me guide you a little bit about what we are going to talk about today. After our introduction, we are going to talk a little bit about the regulations that are in place, DORA, NIS2, and ISO 27001. And then we are going to see a little bit about what that means for your Atlassian Cloud. After we looked at this theory, we are going to look a little bit about what it means to be setting up a backup strategy. And as Kim already said, at the very end, we are going to have some time for your questions. So, Bogdan, we hear so much about those regulations and those acronyms. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Happy to, yeah. So obviously, we all realize that we increasingly live in a more and more dangerous world, and backup and recovery is kind of become an essential part of different business continuity, resilience frameworks, regulations, standards, if you like. So it's really at the heart of all of these initiatives to become for organizations to become much more resilient. As it happens, actually, as this regulation is rolled out, we are starting to see a lot of customers actually coming to us and saying, hey, I want to be DORA compliant. I need a backup and recovery strategy for my SaaS application, this and that. Let's talk. Can you help us out? And similar. So just to kind of outline what are some of the 3 key things, at least in Europe, that we see customers are asking for when it comes to this regulation or standards. The first one is by far very popular, is a DORA regulation. It is active across European Union, and it's designed to improve cyber resilience of specifically financial institutions. So really banks, insurance companies, stock exchanges, and so on. So really financial organizations need to comply with this regulation basically, since this year. And that is driving a lot of efforts, already in 2024, but of course this year as well, across financial institutions to become compliant. So the other acronym that is very popular is NIS2 or NIS2, yeah, you could call it also in German. So it's actually a regulation. It's more of a directive, and every EU country needs to put this regulation into the law, and this has been happening in this 2025 year. So it's a very similar regulation to DORA, but maybe slightly less strict, and but targeting many other industry verticals. For example, energy sector, healthcare, public sector, government. So these sectors actually have to are mandated to be NIS2 compliant. And again, at the heart of NIS2 is, again, backup and recovery, right? You need to make sure that your organization is resilient, whatever data loss happens for whatever reason, cybersecurity or other, you have to be able to recover your data quickly and restore your business operations for organizations that depend on you, or citizens even, right? But lately, we are also starting to see that many organizations that have chosen to be ISO 27001 compliant, which is international standard for information security, those organizations also are increasingly concerned about protecting their data in SaaS and in cloud, in addition to on-premises. And they are coming to us and saying, hey, we have just become ISO 27000 compliant. And as part of that, we need to, of course, also beef up our data protection strategy. So really at the core of ISO standard is protecting of confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the information. And of course, integrity and availability are at the core of every data protection strategy as well, right? We need to protect your data so we can recover it, so it was the same as it was before some incident potentially happened. So again, these are typically three key acronyms that customers come to us when they need to become compliant with specific rules, regulations, or standards. And and at the heart of all of these is really proactive risk management, if you look at it, right? That's what we are trying to achieve through these regulations. And Laura, I know that you have very nice visualization of this, what this proactive risk management actually means in more generic terms. So can you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Yes, absolutely. So, as Bogdan said, all the regulations we have and the rise of importance of those regulations means that we have to put a lot more effort in our continuity management. And to be proactively doing that, there's a circle we have to follow all the time. So first, we have to look at our systems and see what critical assets do we have? What are our business data that would have a critical impact if we lost them, if they were inconsistent, or if somebody else got hold of them? Those are the risks that can be taken. And so we have to take the next step and go and protect this data. This is what we would do, for example, by having access protection, but also a backup system in place. We need some kind of monitoring so that we are able to detect if some critical information has been lost, and so that we are able to even respond. If we don't know anything is missing, we won't be able to do anything. And so after the monitoring, we need some strategy for how to recover the data that has been lost. And because we have a continuous improvement system in place, we need to test these strategies and also reflect on if they are working correctly. So we go again to identify critical assets and risks. This is not static. It is going to be changing during the years, and you are also going to learn that you might need something else. So you always have to go through the circle again and again. And yeah, but in this context, what I've heard often from my customers is, well, we have moved to cloud. We are now using a cloud tool. Doesn't that mean that I don't have to care about backup and that they are going to host my data, so it's not my responsibility to recover data and protect it?
Indeed, yes, I've heard this as well, specifically around Atlassian. But this is really what we are going to explain on this slide. It really applies to any other SaaS application or public cloud as well. And this is called the shared responsibility model. So once you move and start using SaaS applications of any sort or public cloud infrastructure, 99% of those vendors run a form of a shared responsibility model, where they basically say, look, you are now hosted on our infrastructure, dear customer, and using our SaaS application. We are going to take a lot of responsibilities off of you. For example, you don't need to, we will take care of all the hosting of the application. We will make sure application is up and running and secured, locked down, hardened, and all the systems are stable and running, and we will ensure the uptime. So that's all our responsibility now. So no more would you need as a customer, spend weekends patching your Atlassian data center deployment, for example, because that's done automatically for you, which is great, right? Convenience. We want to focus on our business, not on maintaining apps. But there is the other side of this equation that Atlassian cannot really control, and this is your organization, your people, the marketplace applications you decide to use. You as a company, what kind of policies do you deploy? What do you need to comply with? Are you a financial organization that needs to be DORA compliant, or energy organization needs to compliant? So there's so many varieties out there that Atlassian simply cannot control all of these things at all. There's also the data you bring into Atlassian Cloud, and all of these areas are something that Atlassian is not solely responsible for. And in fact, effectively, they very clearly state that customers that need to and want to protect their data, they need to basically make sure that they are backing their data up themselves. And they also need to ensure that they are compliant with policies that they need to be compliant with, and the end users are secured, and of course, marketplace applications that are used are also suitable for their data and their use scenarios, right? So that all these things customers are responsible for, and that is effectively what is the rule in Atlassian Cloud, and is driving a lot of this demand for backup and recovery tools in Atlassian Cloud. And again, it's not Atlassian specific. This shared responsibility model is across the entire SaaS industry, and public cloud is available. So whichever application you look at, you will find a specific version of shared responsibility model, more or less clearly articulated, where it states your data, basically your responsibility. And I know that Laura has also a very kind of simplistic way of a very plastic way to describe this shared responsibility in another kind of very similar situation to in our physical world. So Laura, could you maybe share a little bit of how you like to explain this differently, the shared responsibility model, that is?
Absolutely. I always like to have some comparison to something we know from our everyday life. So one example where you also have shared responsibilities is when you are visiting a parking garage. You will often see those signs around there that the parking garage is not responsible if somebody steals anything or damages your vehicle. They are providing the infrastructure as a SaaS tool will also do. They are applying the basic shelter, like the roof over the car, and they are providing lighting so that you can see and use it, but they will not be responsible if you keep your car unlocked and somebody steals the content of your car. So that is very similar. You have a responsibility that a software provider just cannot take. And so that is why you always have to do some extra steps to care for what you're doing with your backups. So in a parking garage, we're talking about theft or damage. What would be the equivalent risks in the cloud world, Bogdan? Can you elaborate on that a little bit more, please?
Oh, happy to. So indeed, obviously, when we talk about customers using SaaS applications, and remember, if you recall a couple of slides back, Laura was talking about this proactive risk management cycle. The key element of that cycle is you need to identify your critical assets, your data that you need to protect, and then you need to identify risks that this data can be exposed to. And this slide talks about what those risks can be potentially that you need to protect yourself against. And of course, not every risk is equally probable or has equal kind of impact on you as an organization. And this kind of chart shows a little bit how these risks are relative to each other. So it all begins, let's say, with human errors, right? Some people make mistakes, and while that can probably happen a little bit more often because you have different users using Atlassian, the impact sometimes is not that bad. But again, it also depends who the person is that is performing, let's say, makes an error. If it's a single user, that user probably doesn't have a big impact on Atlassian, maybe can delete a few tickets and that's it. But if you're an administrator and you make a mistake, that can have much more devastating. So this revenue impact can be relative, right? Human error depends. If you're an admin, can also cost a lot, right? So you have to be careful. Just yesterday, I was sitting on a call with a customer that, for example, by accident, admin deleted 1,000 tickets, right? And that was really, really bad situation. So again, human error can be small, but can also be a large one. Then you also have configuration mishaps that can kind of make and cause data loss, or insider threats. If you have people that are unhappy in the organization and want to kind of cause damage kind of because of that. Then, as you get more sophisticated, you develop certain automations, those can have errors. And those errors can have side effects that you really want to be, can have specific revenue impacts. And then at the bottom of this kind of probability, the least probable are probably third-party risks. So something happens in Atlassian, for example, or another third party of yours, or of course external cyber attacks. Those, while they are less probable, but they can really have a devastating impact on the organization. And I can tell you firsthand, we are also working very closely with Ingram Micro. And if you have followed in the last few days, Ingram Micro actually has been hit by a big cyber attack, and they are now taking 3, 4, 5 days really to recover and come back to being operational. And it impacts a lot of organizations. Basically some customers can simply not extend their licenses because Ingram Micro obviously is a big distributor globally, and that of course is a very, very big impact. So think about all these things as you identify what critical data you have and what kind of risks can happen to that, and that will then help you develop your protect and other the rest of the strategies. And talking about protection, Laura has nicely moved on to the next slide. Exactly. So we are now moving in this circle to the next stage. So what do we need to be aware of when we are protecting and defining our data protection strategy to protect ourselves against the risks in the previous slide? So some of the things you have to think about, of course, is how critical is your data? How often do you want to back it up? What is kind of the amount of data you can potentially survive, losing, and you may decide, if I do backups daily, that's good enough, or maybe for some critical projects or spaces in Confluence or Jira, you want to do backups more often, like every 2 hours, right? Because a lot is happening and you really would hate losing any data at all. Then how quickly does your business need to recover if some incident happens and data is lost? How long would your business tolerate to get back to being fully operational? Is this like 3 hours, 6 hours? What's kind of the maximum time? That's called the RTO. So these are all kind of metrics you have to think about. Then retention. How long do you want and need to keep your backups? Typically, operational backups are kept for like a couple of months, right? That's typically more than enough. But You also have the other type of backups that are called archival backups, and those are typically useful if you maybe need to be compliant with certain regulation. Sometimes regulation says if you are a financial institution, you have to keep your data backups for 5 years so that auditors can come in and, you know, also review specific data that you have created, and you need to be able to produce data from 3-5 years ago, right? Retention, that's important thing to think about as well. Encryption, of course, as well. Your data needs to be always protected. While if in flight or at rest, sitting on your storage, it should be encrypted, and it, you know, even if bad guys get their hands on it, you know, if it's encrypted, they cannot really do anything with it. And then the last, probably the most important element is what kind of tool are you going to use to deliver data protection strategy that you are putting together. These metrics are important, but the tool probably is the most important because it will drive how much time and how effective you're going to be. And there are options on the market, right? Of course, first and foremost, you can decide you want to just do everything manually, right? This is also what Atlassian out of box delivers, the backup manager, right? You go there, you click, I want to export my data, it takes a few hours, then you go in again and download that zip file. And you can do this, you know, every couple of days, you know, attachments have different exceptions and so on. So it's a strategy, and if it's good enough, of course, it can work. If you want to do one step further, you can develop some scripts and use backup APIs and you know, do a little bit of automation, but still the same kind of deficiencies apply. You always export all your data, so that means that granular recovery is very difficult. You know, if you want to restore just a specific ticket or attachment, that is extremely difficult to achieve using that approach. And then, you know, there's this new backup tool that is coming from Atlassian that is currently in beta that also has, you know, slightly improved capabilities there, but still some other limitations that you absolutely need to be aware of, like 14-day retention, data retention, and again, granular recoverability is not present, and so on. And then last but not least, of course, is third-party backup solutions. And of course, this is where HYCU plays important role. Third-party backup solutions allow you all the flexibility, allow you, you know, very aggressive RPOs, for example. You can do backups every hour if you need to, or, you know, you can keep backups for 5, 7, 10 years if you need to. All this flexibility is available, while backups are fully automated. You can recover your data granularly, and you can store your data also in the storage of your choice, in your public cloud, also on premises. So this is where, you know, you really become the most flexible, and you can really adapt your data protection strategy according to your regulation, your compliance, and any other business requirements you may have as a company. So that is how we typically recommend end customers to deploy a data protection strategy. But it's always best that you hear it also from someone who actually actively helps customer develop and deploy these solutions. You know, Laura, can you tell us how you typically approach consulting your customers about how they should do their data protection in their environment?
Yeah, absolutely. So usually, if you approach us about a backup strategy and ask us how you would do it, we are trying to figure out together a way that suits your needs and your specific company or organization. So we start with asking some questions. For example, how are you used to back up your data? We often talk about backup in the context of migration, and then there are some specifics already in place for how backup needs to be done and what data needs to be stored. So we can take this approach and adapt it to cloud. If you don't have a backup yet, we can talk about what is your critical data and then figure out if you maybe, for example, use a 3-to-1 approach. That is a very popular approach that is very secure because you can have 3 copies of your data. You store it in 2 different storages so that you have two different fail safes. If one of those storages, for example, goes down or is also compromised, you still have another one. And you can also store 1 copy offsite. So this is solved very differently. Some people are using really paper backups. They print out some of the most critical stuff. Some do have a physical storage that they put in a safe somewhere else. And yeah, sometimes it can also mean that you have it on your own service, as Bogdan already mentioned. You can store your data also on your own on-premise location if you have a cloud backup, so that it's not only stored on servers that are out of your hand. Then it is always important to ask yourself, how much can you afford to lose? It is always important to look into, is it effective? You have to assess the risk and you have to decide if it's worth it for you to implement a backup strategy, and how much data is impacting your daily business. So for example, if all your customer data is stored in the cloud and if you lose it, your business would not be able to run at all. It should be a very high priority to install a backup system, of course. And also it is very important to see if there's some data that is more critical than other. So for example, we have customers that have a fire, that are also connected with the fire department, and the emergency plans are also stored in Confluence, for example. So that needs to be accessible right away. And you need to be sure that even in the case of an outage, or if the cloud is not available for some reason, or your data is deleted, you are able to restore it really quickly if it's needed. So that are all considerations you need to take before you are implementing a backup strategy. Now, Bogdan, can you tell us a little bit more about what elements this strategy could have for our customers?
Yeah, absolutely. So once you have kind of defined, of course, a backup strategy, then you need to also take a close look at what about your data? Where are you going to store your data? How are you going to manage, and how long do you need to keep it? So there's a lot of things that are very important there. And of course, we talked about one already, data retention. How long do you need to keep your backups for? Depends by the organization. Some organizations, 3 months is more than enough. We only need operational backups. We don't need archivals. We don't do audits or things like that. You know, that's good enough. Then you talk to insurance companies and they would tell you, no, we need to keep backups for 5 years. We even work with one life insurance company from Nordics who need to keep their data for the lifetime of the people they insure plus 5 years. Imagine how long that can be, right? This can be 40, 50 years. So it's really, it depends on the industry you're in, the regulation that applies to you and your internal rules. Then what about the residency? Where is your backup data going to be sitting? So do you need it to sit in your country, in Germany, for example, or is it good enough if it's within EU or somewhere else? You know, if we talk to customers in Switzerland, for example, they of course prefer data to be sitting in backups to be in Switzerland. Maybe they cannot even leave the country. So extremely important aspects of your strategy, data residency. Then control. Who actually owns my backups? And this is extremely important as well, because very often security compliance, if you put your data and store it in some other vendor's storage, so it's storage that is not under your control, you're unnecessarily putting yourself into this, what we call third-party risk, right? So now, in order for me to access that data, I will actually depend on the backup vendor to actually make sure that the data is available, right? HYCU works a little bit differently. We put you fully in control of owning your data, so you actually always keep it yourself. It's always compliant, always secure down to according to your rules, and you are in control. And then we have resilience, right? So backups are the very first target of ransomware attackers when they attack a specific organization, because they know if you have backups, whatever damage we do, you will probably be able to recover quickly and you will not pay a ransom. That's not profitable model for them, right? Yeah, we're a little bit sarcastic. So you need to make sure that your backups are always locked down and available when you need them. And this is, directly delivered by immutability. So absolutely a technology that is fully built into HYCU as well. And then, of course, encryption. We talked about encryption already. So your data should always be encrypted at rest in flight. So if anybody even steals it, they will not be able to do anything with it because it's, well, encrypted. So that's about retention. And then the last element is going to be about, well, data recovery and testing, right? So that's the last element of the circle of proactive risk management that Laura talked about, right? What about recovery? Nobody wants to be there, right? But look, things happen and you just have to be prepared. So what does it mean to be prepared? Obviously, you have to define how recovery procedures look like. So you have to define who has to do and what needs to be done if specific kind of type of incident happens. So there's no doubt, right? And people also need to be training that incident and recovery process so that they are prepared when the real thing comes, right? They will not be in doubt. They will know exactly what to do and they will be able to do it quickly, right? So this is recovery procedure and testing immediately taken care of, right? So one important aspect to also think about is outages. So am I going to be able to access my backups also if Atlassian Cloud has, for example, an outage? Because potentially this is where you need to access your data probably the most. If for a very short time Atlassian is experiencing potentially an outage, when you critically need access to a specific document, attachment, page on Confluence, like Laura mentioned, this fire department, right? They need to have access to these procedures no matter what. And HYCU allows you to access your backups and extract the data from backups, even if Atlassian is not operational. So that's very useful for these outages, disaster recoveries, things like that. And then, of course, access control. Absolutely. So not everybody should have access to be able to do the recoveries, right? So they have to be special people that are trained how to do it, and procedures, as we said, already documented. And then time to restoration. That's very important. When you do the testing of your requirements, one of the things you have to test against is also, hey, can I recover the data within 3 hours? Because this is what my business wants. My business wants data to be recovered and service operational within a certain parameter called RTO, recovery time objective. And if this is 3 hours, you have to actually test whether that can be achieved in that time. So again, these are kind of 5 important areas to think about when you are thinking about backup and recovery and testing. And that is the concludes kind of this part.
All right. I think we have got a very good overview about all the elements and considerations you have for having a backup strategy. So to conclude, we have talked a little bit about all those regulations that are in place. We have talked about how we are going to, why we are going to apply those to Atlassian Cloud. And we have taken a look at backup strategy and how to approach this for your organization. So I would like you, if you have any questions, to ask them in the chat now if you haven't already done it. And I will give over the microphone to Kim for now.
Yeah, thank you, Laura, and thanks, Bogdan, as well for all the insights. This was very interesting. And yeah, the first questions are actually coming in the Q&A tool. Keep them rolling. We will start with the first one. I think, Laura, this might be one for you. We'll see. How long do you need to implement HYCU backup for Atlassian?
It depends usually on how deeply we want to implement it. We can get it up and running very quickly in maybe a few days. But if we want to have a really consulting for how the backup strategy can look like for your company and do a workshop, we would need maybe two more dates. But I think in about 2 weeks, you can have your strategy up and running if you have the capabilities and the information we need.
Okay, I hope this answers it. Another question coming in. How much storage do you need to back up a 200 GB Jira instance? Bogdan, maybe you can answer that one.
Yeah, of course, happy to. Yes, so HYCU is very optimized when it comes to using backup storage. Of course, the way we do backups is actually what we call incremental forever. So this means that the very first backup is going to back up everything, obviously, right? So there's 200 gigabytes, but we don't really spend 200 gigabytes of storage as such, because we will compress the data and really make it efficient. So probably half of that is what you can expect a full backup to take of space. And then every subsequent backup, let's say a daily backup, is incremental only. So that means that only changes or new tickets or whatever has changed is backed up. Everything else is not backed up. And that really depends on what is kind of what we call a daily change rate. And typically it's maybe a few percent. So as you can see, 100 gigabytes for a full backup, and then let's call it a couple of gigabytes every day of whatever incremental changes have been performed on the day is all there is needed. And then you simply need to calculate well, how long do I need to keep my backups? If it's for 3 months, then you just multiply this by 90 and daily incremental backup multiplied by 90, and then you get to how much storage you need. But typically, I would say it's about, let's say, 200, 300 gigabytes would be more than enough. And to really keep those 200 gigabytes of Jira instance backed up and fully protected with daily backups and keeping them for, let's say, 90 days.
Okay. Another question coming in. What are the key differentiating factors of your solution compared to others?
Okay. Yeah, I would say there are a number of those. When it comes, for example, if we just look at the 3 stages: backup stage, recovery stage, and then I would say the storage or the data retention stage. The key differentiators would be on the backup side. So HYCU is extremely scalable. We can back up even the largest Jira Confluence instances because we have a very scalable backup process that does many things in parallel, and we can really finish very large backups in a very timely manner. So that's a big differentiator. You can also have a lot of flexibility when you are backing up your data. You can, for example, decide, I want to back up this project on an hourly basis because it's so critical to me. And I want to back up some other projects, maybe 70% of the others, just on a daily basis because not much is happening. And I don't want to back up these 5 projects because they are just used for testing and playing, and it's not needed to be protected. So you have all this flexibility that you don't find with other solutions. They will always protect your entire instance with a single, daily backup, and that's all you get. So a lot of flexibility, a very high scalability when it comes to backups. Then when it comes to storage, so HYCU allows a lot of flexibility what kind of storage you want to use. One of the key things of HYCU is we would never, we want you to kind of own your backups. And that means that you actually are able to plug in your own storage into our platform. And when we do backups, we will put all your data to your storage. And that storage can be sitting in AWS, it can be Google Cloud, in Azure, in any region of your choice, right? It can be in Frankfurt, in Google Cloud or Azure, whatever your cloud of choice is. If you don't use any public cloud, we have some other options, right, that are extremely well designed for this as well. If you have very strict security requirements and you say, I cannot have my backups in the cloud, I want to have it in my on-premise storage, we can accommodate this as well. So again, a lot of flexibility then. You know, you really have unlimited storage. You can keep your backups for 50 years if you need to. And you know, they are locked down, immutable, protected against ransomware attacks, so all the good things. And then recovery, right? And I would just say one thing, we can fully back up and recover all your data, including automations. And recovery can be done in a granular fashion and so on. So I would say these are the three big areas we typically like to emphasize, and there is kind of a lot of details. I'm happy to discuss with any customer if we need to go deeper at any point in time as well.
Sounds good. Right now I see one more question here. What other software as a service applications can HYCU back up?
Oh yeah, okay, perfect. Yeah, this is a very relevant one. Of course, Atlassian is extremely important to us, and we protect Jira, Confluence, JSM, Assets, Trello, even product discovery, Bitbucket, right? All these are fully protected by HYCU. We also protect specific Atlassian marketplace applications. For example, Tempo timesheets. This is quite difficult to actually protect. You have a lot of this work hours and all that being logged. And of course, we are able to capture that and protect that data so that your billing and whatever reasons you are kind of maintaining this, keeping this data is intact and protected. So that's Atlassian side of things. Then if we look at the other SaaS applications, Office 365 is a big element for us. Google Workspace, you know, we know that really probably 95% of organizations use one or the other. So this productivity apps are fully supported. Then GitHub and GitLab are two other Git repositories on top of Bitbucket. We also support Microsoft Entra ID, extremely important identity and access management for many organizations. So, and people just sometimes don't really understand how critical that aspect of every organization is, and protecting it should be really probably number one or two thing everybody does when they start using Microsoft Entra ID or Azure Active Directory, as it was once called. Then we also do Okta, DocuSign, Salesforce, and you know, a number of other applications. For example, Box is very popular with certain large customers for storing large files that would otherwise maybe be sitting in Confluence, but with Box you can kind of connect Confluence to files that are sitting in Box storage, right? That's also very popular. Then iManage is a very critical organization for many international law firms. And you know, there's a lot of other stuff as well. So these are some of the things we do, and there's in total about 80 plus SaaS applications and public cloud services that we support. And again, happy to deep dive into all others if anybody wants to learn more.
Yeah, maybe you can deep dive a bit more into marketplace apps, because that was asked just second ago. Really.
Yeah. No, Tempo timesheets is one that is fully available, and that's quite a complex one, because if you know Tempo timesheets, they store a lot of data in Tempo Cloud. So that required of course, some special development to get to that data. Then we support a few others, in particular, those that already keep data in Atlassian Cloud themselves. So they don't keep data in their own cloud, but maybe they keep data or configuration data as attachments, or they keep that in custom fields. Those are automatically protected, right? Like Draw.io, for example, is one such example, because everything is kept inside of Confluence anyway. So you back up Confluence, you back up Draw.io automatically. Then what we often, but sometimes we run into, of course, challenges. One of those is X-Ray. X-Ray is probably, extremely popular, and everybody wants to protect their data there because it's so critical for many organizations. However, we've run into some issues with the APIs, and we are not fully able to complete that module yet. So that's something that we are still working on with the X-Ray to kind of improve the API so we can get and complete that work as well. So it's not yet, it's currently on hold. We need, of course, vendor support to get this completed. So that's, kind of the state of the matters. But of course, there's so many marketplace apps that it's almost impossible to cover them all. So we like to prioritize. And if you have your favorite app you would like to support, please let us know. Let Grenik know, or us as well. And we will we always prioritize what's next when it comes to marketplace apps also.
Okay, cool. So I think for now, that's it for the questions. If you still have questions after the webinar, please, feel free to contact us, and we will obviously answer your questions afterwards as well. I would like to use the opportunity and invite you to our next webinar, which will take place end of August. And that webinar will be held by our colleague Ali. He will talk about Rovo in Confluence and how you can build your first Rovo agent. So he will be building a Rovo agent live together with you. The webinar will be in German though. And Laura, maybe you can paste the link for the webinar in the chat here. So if you want to register, just scan the QR code. I hope the session was informative for you, and I hope you learned a thing or two. And please don't hesitate to contact us if you have any further questions regarding HYCU, regarding data security in Atlassian, anything really. We're here to help. Thank you for your attention.